this book changes everything. This book gives the series a whole new outlook, a huge twist that sends the series in a whole new direction, gives it whole new life. Massive, massive change to the series here. Huge. This particular change affects the entire series, front to back, forwards. It affects numerous characters. It's a huge, major turn in this series. Huge. And it's nice to meet you. I'm Christina, K-O-S-T-I-N-A. This is the D. Louise book series. This is where we read book and talk about books. Listen. Come listen. I have a co-host back there. So anyways, I would ask that you please check out my every weekly Friday Star Trek Next Generation recaps. Also Friday afternoon is If Then. If you like this author, then maybe you like that author. We did a whole thing with the Bridgertons on historical regencies. If you like the Bridgertons, maybe you like Joanna Lindsay's Mallory's or Stephanie Lawrence Sinsters. And I've said this before, if anybody deserves a series, it's Stephanie Lawrence and the Sinsters. There are over 30 books in this series, and main characters in book 1 through 9 become backup characters in future books, so they're recurring through the entire series. It's a character progression. They are awesome books, and they deserve a chance out there. Yes, ma'am. Hello. You want to join Mommy's video? No? Okay. So, we are doing, and before I forget, let me find the page here. I also do a series called Flashback Monday, and that's where we talk about all the books that were reviewed by Romantic Times Book Review magazine back in the day. This is a good place to find new authors, new books to look at. It's an awesome magazine. Every single Monday, we do a podcast. Every single Monday, I do a podcast talking about all the books in this magazine. So since we are doing Murder in Chelsea, the book that changes the series forever, Romantic Times Book Review gave it 4.5 stars. Thompson's latest Gaslight mystery is an intense, well-plotted puzzler that will keep you turning the pages. Her characters are engaging, and the relationship between Frank and Sarah is still dynamic. The descriptive setting brings the reader into the heart of old New York without becoming mirrored in overly detailed explanations. And Sarah is a midwife. She was estranged from her parents way back when, but their relationship has massively recovered, extremely recovered. She's got a relationship with her parents now. She's adopted Catherine. She's got Maeve as a live-in help. And she's got Mrs. Ellsworth. Mrs. Ellsworth's son Nelson is getting a relationship. We've had all this character growth. Come here. What are you walking around for? Come here. Come here. Come here. Be a good co-host. Be a good co-host. Check it out. There we go. Check it out. There she is. Miss Cat, who has a couple of videos coming up, a couple of shorts. We, If cats could talk. I wonder why they named me Sandy. Are you cute? We could have called her Boots, but we had a Boots. See, she's got the white little bootsies. But anyways, back to this. Midwife Sarah Brandt learns that someone is attempting to reclaim Catherine. Oh my god. So let's get to it. And I'm going to warn you now, spoilers. Tons and tons and tons of spoilers. I will not spoil who actually did the murder, but I will spoil all the characters. And I will spoil the major, major, major climax. I am going to spoil all of it because I love spoilers. I love knowing stuff. I love knowing what's going to happen and then reading about it. Like Big Brother starts in 2 months or almost 2 months. I love watching the live feeds. I love knowing who won the contest, who's HOH, who's POV. And then I like watching the episode to see how it plays out, how they won. But I love knowing this stuff in advance. Anybody out there from Canada, please hurry up and sign the petition about BB Can 13. We need to get that rolling. And I'm going to leave it to the bigwigs to handle it. Taryn and Rahab and the Madrid and all those big Jolene peoples who are experts in all this stuff. I'm just, a watcher. I just like to enjoy the episodes and watch them talk about the episodes. But anyway, I digress. We're back to what I do, and that's review books and talk about books and enjoy books. I got books. I got books. I love my books. And I discovered this series, and I got them all. And we're reading our way through to the newest Rose Hill book. But right now, like I said prior, this book changes everything. It sets up a whole new storyline for our characters to enjoy. We're going to get Gino's going to become more of a prominent character. Maeve and Catherine are moving up to the storefront. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. And we all owe Mr. Wilbanks a gratitude. Sarah is heading to the Daughters of Mission Hope. In the beginning, that's where she originally found Catherine. That was a topic of story a couple of books ago. It's a place that takes in ladies that have been thrown out by their families or on the streets for other reasons, and they need a place to stay before they can get on their own feet and get employment, blah, blah, blah. So they take care of the young girls. And that's where she got Catherine from. Catherine was about 3 or 4 years old when she was dropped off at the place, left on their back doorstep. No note, no information about her, nothing, and Catherine wouldn't talk. It was later revealed that she had seen a traumatic event, and it scared her so much that it just scared her speechless, and she would never talk again. So Catherine has adopted her and become her guardian, and has been taking care of her, and through her nurturing and taking care of Catherine, she has started speaking again. And that's when we learned her name was Catherine, because up until the point they were calling her Iggy. So she's worried because Mrs. Keller, the lady that, if my computer screen moves, it's because someone is rubbing their self against it. So she's going to the mission because Mrs. Keller sent for her 2 days ago, but she's been so busy with delivering babies that she hasn't had a chance to respond to the note. So she goes to the mission, and Mrs. Keller finds out that a woman stopped by the mission a couple of days ago. Her name is Annie Murphy, and she was claiming to be Catherine's nursemaid. She said her mother, Emma, well, she doesn't reveal the name at that point, but that her mother was fearful for her daughter's life and her life, and they needed to split up. So Annie takes the child and leaves her at the mission, and her mother goes off. Apparently, she's a Broadway actress, and like an off Broadway actress, and she goes off to Philadelphia and Chicago to perform in plays. And supposedly Annie was taking care of her daughter, but Annie got frightened and took her to the mission. So then Sarah tells Frank about this, and so Frank goes to investigate Anne Murphy's story. And when he gets to Anne Murphy's boarding house, Anne Murphy is deceased. So we also get a little Mrs. Ellsworth. I'm going to do a whole podcast on these later on because I just enjoy Mrs. Ellsworth so much. When the pot roast was in the oven, Maeve and Catherine went upstairs to play. Mrs. Ellsworth turned to where Sarah sat at the kitchen table. Miss Brant, you look troubled. Is it so obvious? Miss Ellsworth pulled off her apron and hung it up. I hope you aren't stewing over a difficult birth or something. No, well, I shouldn't worry you with my troubles, but a woman went to the mission the other day asking about Catherine. Oh dear, who was she? Mrs. Ellsworth asked, pulling out a chair for herself. Sarah told her what she and Maeve had learned about Anne Murphy. I knew it, Mrs. Ellsworth said. You knew about this woman? Oh no, not about her exactly, but I knew something was going to happen. I saw an owl yesterday morning in the tree out back. It's very bad luck to see an owl in the daylight. Sarah managed not to roll her eyes. At least the girls weren't here. They were fascinated by Mrs. Ellsworth's superstitions, and she always seemed to have one for every occasion. Sarah didn't mention she'd heard the owl hooting last night. Heaven only knows what that would mean. So, Frank has called Doc Haynes because Anne Murphy is deceased. He talks with the landlady. Sarah goes and talks to her mother and tells her mother what's going on. So the whole situation is complicated. Frank does investigation. They find out about Catherine's family. Her father is quite elderly. He is also quite ill. Emma Hardy, the actress, is his mistress. He had offered her anything in the world. He was seeing her before his wife died, and then once his wife died, he wanted to make Catherine a legitimate child. He offered to marry Miss Hardy, and Miss Hardy refused. Spoiler. Unknowns to the world until almost the very end of the book. That's why this is a huge spoiler. But the reason she couldn't marry Mr. Wilbanks is because she was already married to Mr. Ron. And she wanted the money from Mr. Wilbanks to take care of herself and Mr. Vaughn. And the only reason she wanted the child back was that she could sell the child back to Mr. Wilbanks for the money so that her and Vaughn could go live their lives. Apparently, it has to be Wilbanks' child because Vaughn turns out that he is unable to have children. It just said that they were together for many, many, many years, and Emma never got with child with him. And then when she got with Wilbanks, she got with child. So obviously there was something wrong somewhere. But Emma's parents really step up to the plate. They really get involved in this. And, at first, Felix was on the fence. Felix is her father about handling her associating with Mr. Malloy. But after Mr. Malloy solved Tom Brandt's murder several books ago, Frank and Felix have developed a little bit of a relationship. Sarah's mom is enjoying, ever since the seance stuff and even before the seance book, her mother has enjoyed these investigations and enjoyed helping Sarah go to all these getting involved in all these. She helps her mother make guest calls, or her mother helps her make guest calls to people she knows to question them about certain people. So her mother is immensely enjoying this. She's enjoying the fact that Sarah is with her. She's enjoying Catherine and Maeve immensely. They've become her grandchildren. Felix is enjoying them too. He's slowly getting himself involved in investigations. In fact, in the previous book, it was Felix who recommended that Frank Malloy be the one to investigate the murder because someone had died in his Knickerbocker Club. So even Felix is developing a little bit of an emotional bond with Malloy too. And Malloy has wormed his way into their hearts, and they have all grown up and gathered into the investigation. And they all enjoy the investigation, helping Malloy solve the whodunit problem. And because Frank was Irish, and because on the poorer side of town, and even though him and Sarah have feelings for each other, no one ever acted on it. And these books are strictly PG. There's no anything in them. And they're just good and stories. They're good. I love the character development from each book. It's amazing. And I love the author notes at the end. And I am sorry, but I am going to spoil it huge right now because I want to share it. The biggest, the whodunit, read the book, find out. But you are going to jump off a bridge, and don't yell at me for sharing because I want to share it because I'm so excited. I'm so excited about the change in this book. I'm so excited about the direction these books go in from here. I am so excited. So if you'll excuse me, I am going to spoil you severely. David Wilbank's funeral was held on a beautiful day, spring day, almost 2 months later. Fortunately, he recovered enough after Catherine's kidnapping to enjoy a few more visits from his daughter, but eventually he asked Sarah not to bring her anymore. He didn't want Catherine to see him and be frightened by his condition, and Sarah couldn't blame him. Michael Hicks, the attorney, asked Sarah and Frank Malloy to come see him in a couple of days. They go see him, and Mr. Wilbanks has made Frank the caretaker or the guardian of Catherine permanently. He honored Sarah's wish and not giving the money to her or Catherine because she did not want anyone to come after her or Catherine. She feared for her daughter's life, her adopted daughter, but in this point it is her daughter in her heart and head. So what Mr. Wilbanks did was he made Frank the guardian and gave Frank all the money, and Mr. Wilbanks was hoping, wink, 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 that Frank would figure out what Mr. Wilbanks wanted him to do, wink, wink, wink. And so Frank decides to do what he was hinted at, and I am going to spoil it like crazy because I enjoyed it. Sarah. She stopped flushing and realized he was as serious as he. Did she really think he'd take Catherine away from her? What? Her voice was like a child's, soft and uncertain. Don't you want to know where I went when I ran off and left her yesterday? Of course I do. That was better, more like the Sarah he knew. I can't believe you didn't ask me right away. I went to see your father. My father? Well, I have to admit, the reason I went was because I thought he might have been the one who convinced Wilbanks to do this in the first place. Why would he do that? God, she didn't know. I'll explain that later. I went to your father's office and scared his poor secretary out of his wits, and I started shouting at your father, but it didn't take long to realize he had no idea what I was talking about. What did he say? He gave me some good advice. He did? Your father is a wise man who likes to tell other people what to do. Did he tell you? He tried. That made her smile, as he intended. What did he tell you to do? He told me to take the money. That's probably good advice. Sarah, I want you to understand some things. First off, I never wanted to be rich. Of course not. There's no of course about it. I'm not a fool. I dreamed about being Mitch. All men do. We think about what we do and where we'd go and how nice it would be never to have to worry about supporting our families. I've done that. I never wanted to have the kind of life where you all worried about where your clothes, what clothes to wear, and who invited you to dinner and which gentleman's club to join. I never wanted that life either. That's why I left my parents' home and never went back. I know. That's why. Well, that's why I was so angry. But your father pointed out that I didn't have to have that kind of life. Even if I take the money, I can live however I want. He said that? Yes, and he also solved another problem for me once that's been bothering me for a while. Well, you see, I'm sure that nothing could make an Irish captive cop socially acceptable in this city. Since when did you want to be socially acceptable? For about 2 years, and your father explained it to me. He said there are two ways to be accepted in this city. You could be born into an old respected family like the Deckers or the Van Horns, she reminded him. Or you can have lots of money like the Wilbanks or Vanderbilts. And if you have enough money, the Van Horns will marry you. Will the Deckers want to marry me? What? Well, I'm only interested in one of the Deckers. Which one? Sarah didn't understand. Definitely not your father. Your mother is already married. He really hadn't expected this to be easy, but he was making it harder than it needed to be. He knew. Sarah, maybe you already know this, but I've been in love with you since, well, I can't even remember knowing you when I wasn't in love with you. So almost from the beginning. What are you doing? What are you doing? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. How's my girl? How's my girl? He's proposing marriage. Now I'm asking you to be my wife. He didn't know what he expected, but not the frown she was giving him. Do you think I wouldn't marry you before, when you were just an ordinary policeman? I didn't know, but I thought you might, and that's why I never asked you. She gasped at him. You didn't ask me to marry you because you thought I would say yes? Uh, yes, and I couldn't ask you to live that kind of life. I couldn't have cared. I would have cared. You'd have my Irish name and you'd live off the money I got from bribes, and people would feel sorry for you because you settled for a crooked cop, and your family would try to put a good face on it. But their friends would laugh at them behind their back, and someday maybe you'd be sorry. But I'd be sorry for sure that I did it to you. So I'm going to leave the rest to you, except I'm going to read the author's notes because I love the author's notes. Yes, Miss Annie. Yes, Miss Annie. Like many of you, I've been hoping Frank and Sarah would find a way to get together and live happily ever after. Well, maybe not completely happily since they continue to deal with many tragic murders as they move on their lives, but at least they'd be together. The problem, of course, was that I had placed so many barriers between them, I couldn't figure out how to overcome them. Luckily for Frank and Sarah and those of us who love them, I expressed my frustrations one day to my classmates in Seton Hill University. I even mentioned that I was considering having a contest to ask for help from my fans in solving this difficult problem. One of my classmates, David Wilbanks, decided to enter the proposed contest by offering a list of suggestions. Since David never read the series and knew practically nothing about it, he was not hindered by any of the facts that I prevented me from seeing a solution, and he sent me a list of suggestions. None of them were exactly right, but one of them triggered the idea I eventually chose. Dave suggested that Frank inherit the money. Thank you. And I hope you will continue to join me for Murder in Murray Hill. I hope you will hit the like and subscribe. I hope you will join me for my Romantic Times book reviews on Monday. And hope you will join me for my daily book reviews. We are doing the Black Dagger Brotherhood this week. We are doing Victoria Thompson. I'm finishing up the Skin Map, Stephen R. Lawhead series. I did the Personal Librarian the other day, well, a little while ago. So I'm hoping you'll check this series out. You'll check me out. I'll go back and watch all my JD Robb. Go back and watch my Laurels, my Janet Ivanoviches, my Krista Davis. I do the series. We'll be later in the year. We'll do Kenyon. We'll do Catherine Coulter. But and if don't forget, if then on Fridays, if you like this author, then maybe you like that author. So please hit the like and subscribe and let me know I'm doing a good job. And how's my girl? She's a good girl. She joined me for my podcast. So have a good one.